I never believed silence could scream until I was trapped in it. Sitting in the backseat of that cab, hands clenched tightly in my lap. The hum of the engine was a distant whisper compared to the chaos rising inside me. The woman beside me, charming, elegant, unknowingly lethal, was describing a man. Her words soft, innocent, even romantic. But to me, they were blades. Because she wasn't just describing someone she cared about. She was describing my husband. Not vaguely. Not similarly. Exactly. She was headed to a beautiful lakeside cabin. To meet a man she said made her feel seen, heard, loved. 30 miles left in the journey. 30 miles between who I was and who I was about to become. Just that morning, I had woken up smiling. Sunlight kissed the sheets as I stretched and felt excitement flutter in my chest. Gregory, my Gregory, had gone up to Lakewood 2 days earlier. "I just need space, Ellie," he said on the phone, his voice gentle. "You know how the noise messes with my creativity." And I believed him. Like always. That's the kind of wife I was. Supportive, trusting. Never prying. Never suspecting. It was Friday, a half day at the office. As I walked out with coworkers waving behind me, I had an idea. One that felt spontaneous, romantic, sweet. I'd surprise him. We hadn't spent a real weekend together in weeks. I missed him, missed us. The idea of dinner together, wine on the porch. Maybe even rekindling something that had dimmed. It filled me with a quiet joy I hadn't felt in months. I packed lightly. My favorite cardigan. A soft sundress. And because something in me dared to hope. The lingerie he gave me last Valentine's Day. Just in case. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. My car wouldn't start. Not once. Not twice. Just a cough from the engine and then silence. Mocking me. I could have called a mechanic. Rescheduled. Waited. But I was determined. I didn't want to waste another second. So I booked a taxi, expensive for the distance, but worth every penny. Or so I thought. The driver's name was George. Kind eyes, warm smile, voice like molasses. His calmness was comforting. We'd barely gotten 10 miles out of Charleston when he slowed and said, "Shared ride, ma'am, just picking someone up." I didn't mind. The more the merrier, right? That's when she stepped in. A woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Auburn hair swept into a flawless low bun. Delicate makeup, a designer scent. She sat beside me and smiled politely. "I'm Samantha." I smiled back, brushing my hand over my ponytail. Suddenly self-conscious about my smudged eyeliner. At first, the ride was quiet. George played soft jazz. Samantha scrolled through her phone. I stared out the window, letting the trees and sky soothe me. But then, with no warning, she spoke. "I'm meeting someone," she said, almost giddy. "It's been a few weeks, he's special." I nodded, murmured something generic. She took it as an invitation. "He's older, brilliant, an interior designer actually." My heart stopped. "He's got this mind," she giggled. "He needs quiet to think. That's why he has this cabin. Says the city kills his creativity." A coldness crept into my chest. She smiled dreamily. "It's our place, you know. He's showing me his new project this weekend. He even said he has a surprise for me." I stopped breathing. "He's sweet," she said. "We've been seeing each other for 6 months now. I think something big is coming." My fingers gripped the seat. My lungs felt tight. My stomach twisted. And then she said it. "Gregory." My world stopped. My husband's name falling from her lips like it belonged to her. I turned toward the window, pretending to admire the view. But inside, I was screaming. She didn't know me. She had no idea the damage her words were causing. And I didn't stop her. Because some dark, focused part of me needed to know everything. And I knew. This was just the beginning. Samantha kept talking. Her voice floated through the car, like background music to a nightmare. You know what I love about him? She asked, twirling a strand of hair. He always remembers the little things. Like how I adore white roses. And he doesn't just grab any bunch. He picks the long-stemmed ones, the kind that look elegant in tall glass vases. White roses. I stared ahead, unmoving. Because those were my flowers. Every anniversary, without fail, Gregory brought me white roses. He said they reminded him of my strength. My quiet ability to hold things together. And now, he was using my story to romance someone else. Samantha reached up and touched her earrings, dainty, silver, delicate. He gave me these last week, she smiled. Said they bring out the gray in my eyes. I nearly choked. He said the same thing to me. Different earrings, same line. Same lie. I almost laughed. Almost. Because it was pathetic. The recycled poetry, the copy-paste affection. As if love came with a template. But laughter didn't come. Only a bitter twist settled in my chest. Tight, cold. Unforgiving. And I stayed silent. Maybe Samantha mistook my silence for encouragement. Or maybe she just didn't care. We met at a cafe, she continued, shifting in her seat. He was sketching something, plans I think. And I accidentally knocked over a sugar jar. It went everywhere. She giggled. He helped me clean it up and then, out of nowhere, bought me coffee to make up for it. I closed my eyes. Because I knew that story. Every single detail. Down to the spilled sugar. Only back then, the woman he helped was me. My grip tightened. The seat beneath my fingers felt like stone. George, the driver, turned up the radio slightly. A soft country tune drifted into the tense space. Gregory is different, she said, her voice glowing. He listens, he really listens. He tells me about his work, about how space should breathe, how colors affect emotions. I get it, you know. It's not just design for him, it's art. She was smiling. She was in love. Completely. Blindly. And somehow, I didn't hate her. Because once, I had worn that same smile. Once, I had held the illusion she now clutched so tightly. The only difference. I was further down the timeline. Had already reached the end. What does he do exactly? I asked, my voice finally finding its way out. It sounded strange, hollow, distant. She beamed. He's an interior designer, but he says labels are limiting, he just creates. Of course he does. The cabin is where he thinks best, she added. He has a studio out there. A studio I helped build. A space I painted, polished, dreamed into existence. But I nodded, pretending. Then her tone shifted. He told me he's married. My stomach clenched. But it's complicated, she continued. He says she's difficult, controlling, always criticizing him. He's staying for now because she's emotionally fragile. Emotionally fragile. That phrase echoed in my mind like a curse. I had held him through his anxiety. Sat beside him through sleepless nights. Cooked for him when he was too stressed to eat. Loved him when he pushed me away. I wasn't fragile. I was tired. There's a difference. I turned back toward the window. Rain had begun to tap softly against the glass. A storm was coming. He's planning to leave her, she added, almost as if seeking my approval. He just doesn't want to break her. Break me. I was already in pieces. And yet, I said nothing. She started describing their plans. Romantic dinners, dreams of Europe, Prague maybe. He said the architecture inspired him. Prague. Last winter, Gregory had told me he might be sent to Europe for a design expo. Strictly business, he had said. Nothing fun, you wouldn't enjoy it. I'd offered to go anyway. He kissed my forehead and told me I'd hate it. He didn't go alone. And I had believed him. Outside, the trees blurred. Rain began falling harder, tracing jagged paths down the window. He told me his wife can't have children, Samantha said casually. Said it's probably for the best. She's kind of unstable, emotional all the time. Unstable. That word stung deeper than any other. Gregory and I had been trying for 2 years. Every test, every doctor, every heartbreak. I had cried, yes. But not because I was unstable. Because I was hopeful. He had turned my vulnerability into his excuse. Turned my love into a burden he blamed for his choices. And she believed him. Why wouldn't she? She didn't know the truth. Not yet. But she would. Soon. Samantha's voice kept drifting, soft as smoke, curling around truths she didn't know were mine. He has this scar, she said, tracing her right forearm with a perfectly manicured finger. From a bike accident when he was a kid, he flew over the handlebars, gravel, stitches. He told me he didn't cry, said he got ice cream on the way home. She giggled, can you imagine? I could. I had. I'd kissed that scar 1,000 times. On the couch. In bed. In the quiet moments when life slowed down. Gregory used to say it reminded him to be careful with what he loved. We used to joke that it made him look rugged. It was a part of him, a story I thought only I knew. And now it belonged to her version of him. I didn't speak. I didn't move. Because if I opened my mouth, I might not stop screaming. But Samantha kept talking. The way people do when they're in love. Offering pieces of their heart like confetti. He wants to show me where he grew up, she said, her voice softening. He says it shaped the way he sees the world. Isn't that romantic? She didn't wait for an answer. And next month, we're thinking about Prague. He says the architecture inspires him. Prague. That word again. Now layered with betrayal. Last winter, he told me about a design expo in Europe. Said it would be boring, that I shouldn't come. I'd offered to take time off. He kissed my forehead, whispered, you'd hate it. But he hadn't gone alone. I'd believed our distance was about stress, work life. I thought we were growing apart because of fatigue, because of time. But the truth, I had become invisible. Outside, the world blurred into green smudges and gray skis. Rain tapped gently on the window, like a metronome for heartbreak. Then Samantha said something that turned my stomach to lead. He told me his wife can't have kids, she said, almost sympathetically. He says it's a sad situation. But honestly, he says she's unstable, emotional all the time. I think he feels guilty, that's why he's stuck. Stuck. As if I were a weight he couldn't shake. As if my pain was his prison. What Gregory and I went through. The tests, the doctor visits, the failed hope. It had broken me in places no one could see. But I had kept going. Held on. Not because I was unstable, but because I had loved him. And now he had twisted that truth into a shield to protect his cowardice. Samantha dabbed her lipstick, bright red again. The color of seduction, of confidence, of everything I wasn't feeling. "We're celebrating our 6-month anniversary this weekend," she said brightly. "He has something planned. Maybe even a ring. He asked for my ring size last week." My heart pounded in my ears. Gregory had asked for my ring size just last month. Said he wanted to get me something special for our anniversary. I thought, maybe he was trying. Maybe we were healing. I thought wrong. Then her words hit me like ice water. "He said he's never felt so free with anyone," she whispered. "That he can finally breathe. That I make him feel like a man again." Breathe. That was our word. Whenever I was anxious, overwhelmed, Gregory would pull me close, whisper, "Just breathe, Ellie." He'd press his lips to my temple, hold me. "Now," he whispered it to her. I didn't even realize the cab had slowed until George turned and said, "Sorry, folks. Pile up ahead, might be a bit of a wait." Good. I needed the time. Time to collect every broken shard of the life I thought I had. Stack them neatly. Understand them. Not for revenge. Not even for rage. But for clarity. I leaned back. Closed my eyes. Let the rain fill the silence. Samantha was still glowing, still talking. Still spinning dreams out of my stolen memories. She had no idea. Not yet. But she would. Soon. Because the storm wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside me. And I was finally ready to face it. The rain was relentless now. The sky had turned the color of bruises, deep purple and ash gray. And as we finally reached the turnoff to Lakewood, each drop on the windshield sounded like a war drum in my ears. George squinted into the storm, the wipers working overtime. The familiar trees whipped by, soaked in mist and memory. I sat perfectly still. But inside, I was a thunderclap waiting to happen. Beside me, Samantha was glowing. Still fixing her lipstick. Still adjusting her hair in the mirror like this was the moment she'd been dreaming of. And in a way, it was. She gave a little gasp. "There he is." She pointed eagerly through the foggy window. "He said he'd be waiting at the gate." I turned slowly. And there he was. Gregory. Wearing the blue flannel shirt I gave him last Christmas. The one I said brought out the green in his eyes. The one he wore when we decorated the tree together. Drank cocoa and whispered about the future we hadn't built. He stood beside the gate, our gate. The one I painted myself 2 summers ago. Kneeling in the grass with my hair tied back and sun on my skin. And now, he was smiling. The kind of smile that once belonged to me. I shrank into my seat, willing the foggy glass to shield me. To make me invisible. George slowed the car and gently pulled to the curb. "This is me," Samantha chirped, completely unaware of the tectonic shift inside me. She turned toward me and smiled. "Thanks for the company, have a lovely weekend." My lips barely moved. "You too." She stepped out. Her heels clicked against the wet gravel. She walked straight into his arms. And Gregory welcomed her. Like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. I couldn't look. But I heard it. "I missed you, sweetheart." Sweetheart. My name. My echo. My end. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically, but softly, like a thread snapping in a favorite sweater. The end of something worn too thin. George looked back in the mirror. Where to next, ma'am? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I could leave. I could let this moment be the final frame of our story. Gregory Whittaker, my husband, kissing another woman in the rain. On the porch of the house we built together. But then, I heard her laugh. Bright, confident, victorious. And something inside me shifted. Take me back to the city, I said quietly. My plans changed. George blinked. You sure, bit of a drive in this weather? I nodded. Yes, please. The car pulled away, tires slicing through puddles. I stared out the window, but I wasn't seeing the road anymore. I was seeing everything we'd ever built. Burn! The tears threatened to rise. But I held them back. 3 miles passed. Then I snapped. Stop the car, I said sharply. George looked startled. Everything all right? No, I said, but I'm going back anyway. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer sympathy. Just turned the car around on that narrow, rain-slicked road. Like he'd done it 100 times before. When we reached the house again, my gate was slightly ajar. Like it was waiting for me. I paid George double. You won't need to wait, I told him. He nodded knowingly, gently, and drove away without a word. And then I stood there, in the soft drizzle, on the gravel path I had laid, looking up at the house we once called ours. I could hear laughter from inside. Gregory's voice. Then hers. It was domestic. It was cozy. It was a hallucination that had taken root in my home. I walked up the porch steps. Slowly. Deliberately. My hand hovered over the door handle. I could barge in. Scream. Unleash hell. But I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. So I fixed my hair, straightened my coat, and rang the doorbell. Footsteps. The latch turned. The door opened. And Gregory's face. Drained. He went pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. Elinors. His voice cracked. WH, what are you doing here? I smiled. A smile sharp as glass. Surprise, I said sweetly. Got off work early, thought I'd come spend the weekend with my husband. He blinked. Panicked. You never said. I didn't, I interrupted softly. A voice behind him. Who is it? And there she was. Samantha, brushing a curl behind her ear. She stopped cold when she saw me. Her expression froze. She looked from me to Gregory, then back again. I extended my hand toward her. Calm. Collected. Hi, I said. I'm Elinor, Gregory's wife. She didn't take my hand. She didn't have to. Because in that single moment, everything crumbled. The roses. The earrings. The sweet nothings. The lies. And the silence that followed was deafening. Gregory's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Words failed him. Truth abandoned him. And eyes. I stepped inside anyway. Because it was still my house. And I wasn't done. The scent hit me first. Rosemary and bergamot. The candle I left on the windowsill last time I was here. Still burning. Still pretending this was home. But it was. Not anymore. Gregory stayed frozen at the door, as if unsure whether to invite me in or throw me out. I walked past him, unbothered, unshaken. I hung my coat on the hook I had installed by the door 3 years ago. The wood still slightly warped from the rainy season. Samantha followed, heels tapping softly on the floor. The sound of guilt trying to stay composed. The living room hadn't changed. Same blue throw folded neatly on the couch. Same coffee table I refinished by hand. 2 steaming cups of tea. A small plate of lemon cookies, my recipe. My stomach turned. So cozy, I murmured, running my fingers across the mantel. Looks like you've made yourselves at home. Neither of them replied. I turned. Smiled faintly. Well, it would be rude of me not to offer my guests something to drink. Gregory opened his mouth. Closed it again. Samantha sat down slowly. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had. Sit, I said gently, gesturing to the couch. It's raining. No sense in sending anyone back out right away. They obeyed. Silently. I walked into the kitchen. The one I'd painted sage green during one long weekend of wine, music, and dreams. My hands moved automatically. Opened the right cabinet. Found the good mugs. Sliced the cheese. Arranged a charcuterie board. It was muscle memory. An old performance. But this time, the audience was very, very different. When I returned, I set everything on the table like a perfect hostess. Calm, graceful, unapologetically composed. Gregory sat stiff as a statue. Samantha's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. I took my seat across from them, crossed my legs, folded my hands in my lap. And then, so I said, smiling, how did you two meet? Samantha blinked. At a cafe, Gregory muttered, staring at the carpet. I nodded. The sugar jar story, classic. He flinched. Samantha set her cup down too fast. Tea spilled. She didn't notice. I leaned forward slightly. Do you love him? I asked her. Her eyes widened. I thought I did. Do you still? She looked at Gregory. Then back at me. I don't know. Silence settled like dust. Heavy. Undeniable. Alina, Gregory finally said, voice shaky. I raised a hand. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm not here to scream or beg or ask why. I already know the why. He looked stunned. It's because you're weak, Gregory. Because you're selfish. Because you wanted something new. Instead of fixing what you already had. His face turned red. He opened his mouth. Thought better of it. Smart man. For once. I turned to Samantha. You know. He said the exact same things to me. Her mouth parted. No words came. That he'd never felt more free. That he could breathe around me. That I made him feel like a man. Her face fell. And I believed him too. We sat in that room. 3 people. 1 lie. Too many truths. Until I slowly stood. Walked to the mantel. Picked up the silver picture frame. Our wedding photo. Me in ivory lace. Him in navy blue. both of us laughing like we had forever. I turned it around. Set it face down. "I think we're done here," I said quietly. Samantha stood slowly. Her eyes lowered. "I didn't know, I swear." "I believe you." She swallowed. "I should go." "No," I said, surprising even myself. "You'll stay the night. It's late, roads are slick. And I don't send strangers into storms. Even ones who kissed my husband." She looked like she might cry. Gregory looked like he already had. "Guest rooms upstairs," I said. "Last door on the right. Fresh towels in the closet." She nodded, murmured a quiet "thank you," and disappeared up the stairs. Gregory turned to me, shoulders sagging. "Ellie, eyes." I held up my hand again. "No more." He stood there, small and silent, as I took a long sip of tea, and let the silence speak for me. Because in this house, in this moment, I was the one in control. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Not even because I was sad. I lay awake in what used to be the guest bedroom, my bedroom now, listening to the familiar creaks of a house that once held every version of me. The groan of old wood in the wind, the whisper of rain sliding down the windows, and beneath it all silence from down the hall. I imagined Samantha curled up in what was once the future nursery, the room we painted soft yellow, dreaming of lullabies and crib mobiles. A room that was supposed to hold new life. Now it held the woman who almost stole mine, and didn't even know it. Somewhere between midnight and morning, I got up. The house was still. Still mine. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, started a pot of coffee, and stared out the window while it brewed. Steam rose from the pot like breath in the cold. Outside, the sky was softening, black fading to charcoal, the first hint of dawn brushing the trees. I heard footsteps. Samantha. She stood in the doorway, pale and quiet. Her hair was loose, her mascara faintly smudged. "Can I sit?" she asked, her voice a whisper. I nodded. She eased into the chair across from me, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of an empty mug. "I didn't sleep," she said. "Me neither." The silence between us was no longer tense, just heavy, like an old blanket draped across two strangers who now shared the same ghost. "How long did you know?" she asked. "Since the taxi." She blinked. "All that time, and you didn't say anything." I poured coffee into 2 mugs and slid one to her. I needed to see it for myself. She stared into the swirl of her drink. "Why didn't you scream or throw me out?" I sat down across from her. "Because I'm tired of screaming. And you didn't betray me, Samantha." "He did." She looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "I didn't know, he said you were cruel. Controlling. That you'd ruin his life if he left." I gave a soft, dry laugh. "Of course he did. That's what cowards do. They twist the truth into a prison and hand someone else the key." "I feel stupid," she whispered. "You're not." But I believed him. So did I. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, her reflection warping in the coffee's surface. "I thought I was saving someone," she said. "Turns out, I was just another version of the problem he didn't want to fix." The kettle on the stove whistled softly. I ignored it. "You know what the worst part is," she continued. "He never really told me about you, not properly. No photos. No stories. Just hints. Like I was supposed to imagine you as the villain. I stood slowly, walked to the cupboard, pulled down an old photo album, laid it gently on the table. "Here," I said quietly. "This is the woman he was married to for 5 years." She opened it hesitantly. Page after page. Christmas mornings, beach vacations, the cabin under construction. Us laughing, us building. Us pretending we were forever. She stopped on a photo of Gregory kissing my cheek. I remembered that day. I had the flu, but still cooked dinner. He said it was the best meal he'd ever had. She turned another page. Paused. "That's the restaurant," she whispered. "The one with the fountain." "Our place," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. She closed the album slowly, pressing her palms against the cover like it hurt to touch. "I'm sorry." "I know." A long pause. "What will you do now?" she asked. I looked up. "I'll drive you home." She looked surprised. "You don't have to." "I want to." I went upstairs and changed. Jeans, a sweater, something that felt like armor. I tied my hair back and grabbed the car keys from the bowl near the door. Gregory was still asleep. Or pretending to be. I didn't care. Samantha waited at the door. She looked different. Smaller. Like the glow from yesterday had been wiped clean, leaving only reality behind. We didn't speak as we stepped out into the quiet morning. The rain had passed, but the ground was still damp. The sky a soft, bruised gray. She climbed into the passenger seat without a word. I slid behind the wheel and started the car. The silence was familiar now. Not awkward. Not even uncomfortable. Just honest. For the first few miles, we said nothing. Samantha stared out the window. Her hands folded tightly in her lap, like she was afraid of what she might touch if she moved. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for not hating me." I kept my eyes on the road. "I don't hate you." She nodded slowly. "You didn't have to be kind." I glanced at her. Then back at the road. We were both lied to. That makes us the same kind of woman. Just at different stages. She turned her face back to the window. But I saw it. The faint trace of a smile. Sad but real. We didn't speak much after that. But something passed between us in the quiet. Not forgiveness. Something gentler. Recognition. After an hour, I pulled up to her apartment complex. A modest building, ivy creeping up the sides. A place that probably once felt safe. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. Before stepping out, she turned to me. "If it had been the other way around, I don't think I could have done what you did." I met her gaze. "You could have. You just don't know it yet." She gave me a long, searching look. "Thank you," she said again. I nodded. "You deserve someone who doesn't have to lie to feel loved." She opened the door, paused for a beat, and then disappeared into the stairwell. And just like that, she was gone. I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I wandered the streets of a city that somehow looked exactly the same, and nothing like before. I drove past old coffee shops, bookstores, the small corner cafe where Gregory and I used to sit on Sunday mornings, laughing over lattes and crossword puzzles. Past the hospital where we once held hands in cold waiting rooms, hoping for answers we never got. Everything around me still stood, unaffected, untouched. But I had changed. The woman who had packed a sundress and lingerie the morning before. The one who wanted to surprise her husband with love. She didn't exist anymore. And oddly enough, I didn't mourn her. When I finally stepped through the door of our condo, it felt quieter than usual. Not in a hollow way, but in a peaceful way. Like the aftermath of a storm that had ripped through everything false and left only the truth behind. Later that evening, Gregory came home. He stood in the doorway, dripping with rain, his eyes locking on the suitcase by the bedroom door. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, wet, wide-eyed, unsure. "Ellie," he said softly, "can we talk?" I didn't look up from the mug I was rinsing. There's nothing left to say. I was stupid, he started. I got lost. No, I said, turning off the faucet. You didn't lose yourself. You just chose a version of yourself that didn't include me. I never stopped loving you. I finally turned to face him. Don't lie. He flinched. You loved the idea of me. The loyalty, the comfort. But the real me. You haven't loved her in a long, long time. He took a step forward. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, Gregory. You broke something that doesn't go back together. His eyes darted around the room, like he was trying to find something familiar to hold on to. A memory, a hope. The cabin, the condo, everything we built. I bought the condo before we got married, I cut in. And the cabin deed. That's in my name. He blinked. You've already decided. I filed this morning. Mutual consent. If you don't contest it, we'll be done in 2 months. He sat down heavily on the edge of the couch. Suddenly older. Smaller. I didn't hate him. But I didn't pity him either. Gregory wasn't evil. He was just weak. And I had spent far too long loving a man who needed admiration more than honesty. By the end of the week, Gregory was gone. There were no slammed doors. No last-minute pleas. No angry shouting in the hallway. Just quiet decisions. And the soft sound of packing tape sealing up a life. I folded his clothes carefully, boxed his books, even set aside his favorite coffee mug. Not because I was being generous, but because I needed everything false to leave with him. When the door finally clicked shut behind him, I didn't cry. I changed the sheets, repainted the bathroom, bought a new plant for the windowsill. And then I went back to the cabin, alone. It was still beautiful. Still mine. I walked through the space we had once built together, touched the furniture I had chosen, ran my hands over the banister we had argued about, and stood in the center of the living room like it was a stage. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a character in someone else's story. I didn't need to burn it all down. I just needed to begin again. So I did. I hired a contractor, knocked down the wall between the kitchen and the living room, let the light in. I turned the guest room, once meant for children, into an art studio. I didn't know if I could paint, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was creating something for me. And in that quiet, sun-drenched space, I began to remember who I had been. Before I was someone's wife, someone's burden, someone's lie. 3 months passed. One crisp autumn afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe by the waterfront. Sketchbook open. A half-finished charcoal drawing beneath my fingertips. The breeze smelled like cinnamon and sea salt. Children laughed nearby. And then, Elinors. I looked up. Samantha. She looked different. Lighter, Her hair shorter, her face softer. She wore less makeup. She looked like someone who had shed a skin that no longer fit. And beside her, a man. Early 30s. Scruffy beard, kind eyes. He looked at her like she was his entire world. We hugged like old friends. "This is Ben," she said. Her smile was warm, real. The kind that grows in the soil of healing. I introduced myself simply as Ellie. She didn't bring up Gregory. She didn't need to. But as they were leaving, she paused. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." I nodded. "You deserve someone who doesn't need to lie to feel loved." She smiled. "So do you." That night, back at the condo, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. "Alina," the message read. "This is Henry, Gregory's old friend. We met once at that Christmas party. I heard about everything. I'm sorry." I remembered him. He was kind, gentle, the type of man who made you feel like you mattered. Even in passing conversation. There was a pause. Then, "I was wondering, would you have dinner with me sometime?" Just two old acquaintances getting reacquainted. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then smiled. I typed, "That depends. Are you the kind of man who tells the truth?" His reply came quickly. "Always. Even when it's hard." I hit send. Then yes. Later that night, I stood at the window of my condo. My space. My silence. My new beginning. The sky outside faded from pink to gray. The city lights blinking like stars trying to break through. And I felt it. Not victory, not triumph. Freedom. Not because I ruined Gregory. Not because I won. But because I chose myself. I let go of the illusion of who we were supposed to be and embraced the truth of who I was finally becoming. And that was the greatest revenge of all.